You probably already have somewhat of an idea of what the Senran Kagura series is. Whether you've played the games, watched the anime, or seen some fan animations on sketchy websites, it's the series that takes all of the degenerate fantasies that you can imagine and mixes it up with some badass combat with a surprisingly deep story. Okay, maybe it's not that deep, but it does hit in some areas that you might not expect judging by the cover art. And today it's time to jump into yet another game in the series that strays away from the hack and slash combat that you're all used to. We've already talked about a few of the other games where you can both hit girls with pinballs and give them intimate massages, so check those videos out if you want to. But instead of those filler content games, Peach Beach Splash is one game that moves back into the realm of combat, just with super soakers instead of katanas. And I'm pretty sure you can imagine where this is going. Now personally, I'd question why they'd be having fights in bikinis back then, but this series is way past the point of being rational. We focus on the teams Hanzo, Hebijo, Gessen, Crimson Squad, as well as some of the legends and new characters in the series. And in this battle, the girls can't use their special ninja abilities, but instead are given water guns alongside some strange cards. And things get even weirder as this entire event is turned into a game show hosted by some of the school teachers, Miss R and Mr. K. The girls are invited to fight in teams, with the winning team being able to get anything that they want as a grand prize. The usual antics take place, with each of the story modes focusing on specific teams and their journey throughout the tournament. Every girl has a chance to let their tropes shine, just like the other main series games. Meaning that you get to see the usual scenes like Katsuragi getting hands-on with as many girls as she possibly can. We even get to see stories from characters that don't usually get as much screen time. Just remember that the dialogue can be anywhere from corny to just straight up cringe at times, but that's fairly normal based on everything I've played so far. Outside of all the playable characters, the announcers lead the plot of this game show perfectly. They'll have moments where they talk in the background of each match and they'll give their commentary, but I rarely pay them any mind until they randomly say, "Oh shit! Obviously, the plot here is meant to be taken lightly, with more side stories added outside of the main campaign. You'll get scenarios with certain groups of girls as you battle your way through to the conclusion that most of the time ends with exactly what you'd expect. As much as the story isn't anything to dig deeper into, I think the most important part here is how much the combat changed from what we're used to. Taking a turn away from the hack and slash and trying out the third-person shooter formula is weird, but it's a refreshing experience. It's like having that one beach episode of your favorite anime. Like, do we need to have everyone in bikinis getting each other soaking wet? The answer is absolutely yes! But when you can do it, why not take advantage? And as nonsensical as it seems, it's actually fun running around and just shooting enemies. Although it's a lot more simplistic than other obscure shooters like Splatoon, with you being limited to a short selection of weapons, movements, and attacks. That's where the card system comes into play, where you're given the chance to switch up your loadouts. So for whatever reason, this game hinges itself on the cards from the Senran Kagura New Wave game. This was a mobile game that was available on Android, iOS, 3DS, and even the Wii U. It was shut down back in 2018, but luckily its legacy is still living on through Peach Beach Splash because it's using the same card art for all of your abilities. Actually, there's a lot of girls that debuted in the card game and made their way into Peach Beach Splash as playable characters. And sadly, not all of them made it, but that's not really important. We'll talk more about that later though. The card system can sometimes be a bit bloated, and half the time I don't see a reason to look too deep into it. Outside of randomly getting cards to fill out your deck, you'll mostly be upgrading the weapons and characters you use the most. So it's probably best to upgrade the skill cards when you get the 4-star and 5-star versions of them. Because even with over 800 cards to collect, most of these are duplicates with slightly different stats. So when you unlock different cards with one girl on it, the effects could be exactly the same but with higher or lower stats. As for the pet cards, you're going to want to see which one fits your playstyle best, since some of those can cause explosions, stun your opponents, or even heal you. But even after you build a masterful deck filled with all the best cards, there still comes the RNG factor. What really sucks is that all these cards get mixed together in your deck as you play, and that adds a layer of randomness to fights where you have no idea what hand you might get in each battle. So even if you do build a solid deck, you're going to be relying on the heart of the cards to get exactly what you need depending on the situation that you find yourself in. Luckily, most fights aren't too long or difficult, so I can't say it's a huge deal to have a souped up deck. Most of the game I rocked out with the base deck that they give you at the beginning, and it served me pretty well. But the main cards you're going to want to pay the most attention to are going to be the weapon cards. And you can focus on the character cards too, but it's not nearly as important since you can't always choose the exact girl that you want to be during the story. But no matter who you end up playing as, you can always use whatever weapon you desire. So as you upgrade your weapons, you get stat boosts and damage boosts that carry over to every character no matter who is using it. And personally, I love the assault rifle and the dual pistols for their speed. So it worked out best for me to focus on upgrading those weapons before anything else to match any tough fight I got myself into. Well, again, not that tough. The worst situations I found myself in ended up being where my entire team would get wiped out. But because you have so many hearts and health, you really don't ever go down too easily. And granted, I didn't play on the hardest difficulty, but I think I need to do a lot more grinding for cards before I'm ready to take that challenge. There's also online multiplayer, but to nobody's surprise, I had no luck trying to find matches. From what I've seen though, it's similar to the tournament mode where you go head to head against a team of NPCs. And I do see how that would get pretty interesting if you had full team-on-team battles. I'm pretty sure that if this were a free-to-play title, maybe I'd have found a few matches. But that probably would have gotten pretty boring pretty quickly. While you do play as a wide variety of characters from the series, none of them have a unique playstyle. So if you have a specific waifu that you love to play as, it's as easy as leveling them up, equipping them with the best set of cards, and you're good to go. It's a bit disappointing since this could have been a chance to add more depth to the gameplay. And yeah, I know Overwatch isn't the best game to be talking about anymore, but think about how the characters are given different roles and classes. Depending on your enemies and the environment, you might choose someone like Genji to scale walls or Sombra to get into the backline. But maybe I'm thinking a little bit too hard for a game that has more jiggle physics mechanics than actual game mechanics. It would have been nice to have some of the girls be tanky or get special and unique abilities based on their personalities. I can easily see someone like Asuka being a speedy glass cannon or Yozakura being a tank since her main weapon is usually these big bulky gauntlets. I do think it's a missed opportunity, but then again, I'm probably expecting too much from a series where this is the gameplay. Other than that, the Paradise missions are side stories that involve smaller groups of the girls. If you are someone who genuinely cares about the plot, this is where you get some of the more obscure interactions between girls that otherwise wouldn't talk to one another. It breaks away from the main storyline, but still uses walls of text to move the story forward. The fights here are extremely basic, but a very quick way to unlock more card packs. Most of these battles end up being one-on-one or at the most a small group of enemies. It's something that's a cute addition but serves mostly to help out the grind. Funny enough, one thing I never paid much attention to was how a majority of these girls look exactly the same. Outside of the obvious lolly-bait characters, this goes to show how empty a lot of the character design actually is. As much as you can change the outfits, hairstyles, and hair colors of everyone in almost all of these games, I tend not to get too deep into that. For some people, the dioramas might be like the photo modes in games like God of War, except with half-naked anime girls instead of Norse abominations. But it's always a bit much for me, especially here. I tend to always end up with extra money to splurge on dumb costumes, but not here since most of that money goes into buying card packs. So everyone I played as kept their basic outfits through my entire playthrough, meaning they all had the same exact white bikinis. And if I showed you a bunch of these sus scenes where the girls get defeated and I crop out their faces, then I bet you'd have a hard time telling me which of these characters is who. And it's not like it's that important, but I just can't unsee that fact now. And finally, we do have the obvious microtransactions, but this time it's a little bit more grimy. Normally, you can only buy things like outfits, accessories, and occasionally different characters. But because of the card system, you can purchase currency to help you pull for better cards. And obviously, I would never suggest that you do this, especially since the online community is pretty much dead. Like, if you really are dedicated to getting one specific card to fill out your loadout, then just grind through the levels. All I can say is Godspeed to whoever is out here trying to get all 800 cards, because you are much better of a person than I am. But for what Peach Beach Splash sets out to be, I'm kinda surprised that it turned out to be such a fun idea. It's still a pretty obvious shill for degenerates who wanna see wet anime girls in bikinis, but it's not half bad. Again, if they made a free-to-play sequel with some added gameplay mechanics, I could see this being a fun rival to other alternative shooters. Like, imagine this being the rival to Splatoon, or that other Splatoon clone that's being made by Square Enix. Either way, it's nice having more shooters that mix up the genre in various different ways. But what do you think about Peach Beach Splash? I would love to hear all your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you all in the next video.